Hello and welcome to Coffee with Craig. Obviously I'm Craig. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to offer, prayers and condolences to thoughts and prayers out to all of those who were impacted by the shooting that took place yesterday morning in Northern California. It's just about a couple hours or an hour and a half away from here where we are in Sacramento. We're not going to talk a lot about it today because obviously information is still coming out. We're still learning a lot more about what occurred, about the individual who perpetrated this crime. But rest assured, as more comes out, obviously it will add to the discussion. And obviously we will talk to you about, once again, and show why it is so important that individuals be allowed to be able to exercise their God-given right at self-defense, and not have their Second Amendment rights restricted. Now, along those lines, and why that is so important was following the shooting that took place in Texas. The Boston Globe, which, as we all know, is not exactly a conservative newspaper, came out with a piece basically calling for firearms confiscation. Now, in their piece, they note that, a couple of interesting things that they did recognize. They recognize that what usually happens after these things is you have people who come out from the anti-gun left, and they come out and they castigate those who, would offer prayers and condolences, as I just did, and say, well, we need to do something. We have to do something in order to keep these things from happening. And then they turn around and they offer legislation that would have had little to no impact when it came to in terms of stopping whatever the particular mass shooting was. And they always offer it saying, well, we've got to do something, kind of like, well, gee, I need to put air in my tires because my car won't start. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I know. But even they recognize that the things that are being proposed largely will have little to no impact. So, what is their recommendation? Gun confiscation. Let's go back and let's just read just a real quick segment. So, what it says here, it says that in the aftermath of the Texas shooting last week, Democratic lawmakers did what they always do. They skewered their Republican colleagues for offering only thoughts and prayers and demanded swift action on gun control. Time is now, said Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, for Congress to shed its cowardly cover and do something. Trouble is, it's not clear the something Democrats typically demand would make a real dent in the nation's epidemic of gun violence. Congress can ban assault weapons, but they account for just a tiny sliver of the country's 33,000 annual firearm deaths. Once again, two-thirds of those from suicide. So yeah, I doubt many people are using assault weapons to commit suicide. I don't know the exact statistics. I'm just thinking common sense. You really don't need an assault. Anyway, getting back to the thing. And tighter background checks will do nothing to cut down on the 310 million guns already in circulation. So, what is their answer? They're saying, in other words, the proposals aren't just difficult to enact in the current political climate. Their political effects would also be quite limited. On occasion, though, leading Democrats will make oblique reference to a more sweeping policy change, seizing a huge number of weapons from law-abiding citizens. So this is their answer. Now, what they do is they offer up as an example what occurred in Australia, where they banned a large number of firearms, and then they had a compulsory or mandatory gun buyback program where you were required to basically, the government confiscated your weapon and gave you money for it. And they increased taxes in order to be able to pay for that program. What they note from that is they note that there was a significant decrease in firearms-related deaths. Okay, what they didn't talk about, and what they don't talk about in this article, was the number of deaths and homicides did not go down. The number of suicides in Australia did not go down. Now, what did change was the number of violent crimes. The number of assaults went up. Battery went up. Home invasion robbery went up. Rape went up. All of these areas of violent crime in Australia went up. Why? Because they knew that the people had been disarmed. Gosh, I know somebody has mentioned that before. Somebody has said that when you disarm people, that you're just going to be potentially making victims out of them. Well, that's exactly what the Boston Globe is calling for. They're calling for, once again, victimization. Now, the other thing to note is that Australia did not have and still does not have a Second Amendment. Even though they would probably say that there is a fundamental human right to be able to defend yourself, they do not have a constitutional right or a right in their government, a right that is founded by their document that says that they have a right to bear arms in order to defend themselves. Well, guess what, Boston Globe? We do. So, before you go and you start talking about we're going to start confiscating firearms, just know and understand that we have a Second Amendment. Second Amendment that allows us to be able to defend ourselves. And I know, sometimes I feel like a broken record whenever I say this. But I understand this. I understand that I have a responsibility, not just a right to defend myself, but with rights come responsibility. I have to be a responsible gunner. I have to be responsible in terms of protecting myself, my family, and my community, at the very least until law enforcement shows up. Because as we all know, police response times aren't always the best everywhere because law enforcement can't be everywhere all the time. So, once again, getting back to the Boston Globe, it's interesting how, once again, in states like Massachusetts or like here in California, how you have policymakers who largely are surrounded, and I'm quite sure if you went into the Boston Globe, I'm pretty sure that their buildings probably got armed security. They're protecting their building. It's always interesting to me how people who are surrounded by people with guns to protect them tell all of the rest of us that, you don't have a right to be able to protect or defend yourself. Kind of sad, I know. But hey, the important thing is that we stand up and that we speak up. And as long as we do, then we'll make sure that our rights will always be protected. So it's important that we have this fight. We have to have this fight all the time. It is every generation has to fight for their rights. Every generation has to fight to keep their nation, to keep this nation free. And this is our battle. So, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for being a part of the fight. Please remember, like this video, share this video, and let folks know what we're doing here at the Firearms Policy Coalition and how we're fighting for your civil rights. Take care. Have a good day.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.